everyone. Thank you for joining me today. We are diving deep into a groundbreaking medical technology that's set to revolutionize cardiac rhythm management. And I'm joined by Andrew Shute, the Senior Vice President of EBR Systems, a company that's quite literally transforming how we approach heart failure treatment. Andrew, thanks for joining me today.
Many thanks for the invite, Rhythm.
Absolutely, it's a pleasure. Now, to set the stage for our viewers, EBR Systems has developed the VICRD system, a remarkable device about the size of a grain of rice that's poised to revolutionize how we approach cardiac resynchronization therapy. So let's dive right in. Now, the technology, Andrew, is at the heart of your innovation, which is quite literal. Let's start the interview by discussing how does the VICRD system's leadless, ultra-compact design provide a significant technological advantage over current cardiac resynchronization therapies?
Yeah, well, thanks. So all pacing devices, whether they are maybe pacemakers to treat slow heart rate, implantable defibrillators to shock or cardiovert patients, or cardiac resynchronization or CRT devices, they've traditionally relied upon leads or wires to deliver the electrical stimulus to the heart muscle. Now, these leads enter via a vein under the collarbone and travel to the heart. And they've long been the Achilles heel of pacing systems. And the leads, once they're implanted, they can migrate, resulting in loss of pacing. The wire inside the lead can fracture due to repetitive motion. And specifically for cardiac resynchronization or CRT devices, the lead must be placed in a vein on the outside of the heart to avoid development of blood clots, which can result in stroke. So to address these limitations, the CRM market or cardiac rhythm management market has been moving towards leadless pacemakers and leadless ICDs. However, our YCRT system is the only leadless technology that could be placed inside the left ventricle to treat heart failure. And that's because these other leadless devices are around 20 times larger than ours. So if they were implanted into the left ventricle, they'd likely be thrombogenic, causing clots, which could then in turn cause a stroke. But in contrast, our device becomes completely endothelialized, or rather the heart's own tissue grows over and completely encapsulates it in about 30 to 45 days, removing any risk of clot formation. But importantly, as we are a CRT device to treat heart failure, we are not directly competing with these other leadless pacemakers, which are just used for bradycardia or treating a slow heart rate. In fact, we're complementary. Around 30% of all pacemaker patients go on to develop something called pacing-induced heart failure within about 4 years. And these patients then require what's called an upgrade to CRT, and our WISE device provides the only means to upgrade these other leadless pacemakers to CRT.
I understand. That's truly very fascinating, Andrew, and it's clear that such innovation doesn't emerge in a vacuum. Now, you have identified a substantial market opportunity that must be driving this technological breakthrough. So your company has identified $3.6 billion US market opportunity. So can you walk us through this market potential?
Yeah, that's great. And that 3.6 billion is just in the US market. I'd just like to clarify. And this is actually made up of 4 segments. And the first 2 are for treating patients that are considered previously untreated, meaning they failed conventional lead-based CRT. And these are acute lead failures. So these are where during the implant, they were unable to implant the lead that paces the left ventricle. Then we've got chronic lead failures. So these patients had a successful implant, but however, the pacing lead subsequently either fractured, migrated, or needed to be programmed off. The next group is called high-risk upgrades. So these are these pacemaker patients I referred to who develop pacing-induced heart failure that require an upgrade to CRT. Now, there's a large subset of these that due to their risk of infection or vascular occlusion, or they have other comorbidities such as diabetes or renal failure, the WISE upgrade can be used to avoid vascular and pocket-related complications in those patients. And the fourth patient we just touched on is leadless upgrades. And this segment is growing rapidly and really driven by the high growth rate and adoption of leadless pacemakers. And as we just mentioned, leadless pacemakers are complementary to us as we provide the only solution to upgrade those 30% of patients who develop pacing-induced heart failure to CRT.
Now, Andrew, what's particularly compelling about medical innovations is their ability to genuinely improve patient outcomes. So, could you elaborate on how the VICE system's ability to reduce left ventricular end systolic volume in heart failure patients represents a breakthrough in treatment?
Yeah, thanks. Well, firstly, left ventricular end systolic volume, I guess you consider that a measure of the heart's efficiency. So it's a measure of how much blood is left in the heart at the end of the contraction phase. So the less blood there is, the more efficient the heart is, and resulting in a greater cardiac output. And studies have shown that a 10% reduction can result in improvements in both longevity and quality of life for a patient. Now, results from our CRT study were presented at the Heart Rhythm Society meeting last year and then published in JAMA Cardiology in July this year. And the headline result was an amazing 16.4% reduction in left ventricular end systolic volume. So to give some context to this, our study only enrolled patients who had previously failed lead-based CRT, or they were deemed too high risk for lead-based CRT. So it's a fairly tough group of patients to treat. And so we clearly exceeded that benchmark set by other studies of 10% by having a 16.4% reduction.
Mm-hmm. Your clinical results definitely sound promising, and it sounds like that you're ready to bring this to the market. Now, for my next question, what are the key strategic considerations in your US expansion plan? And specifically, how does EBR Systems plan to capture the market share, particularly within those top 252 hospitals?
Yeah, thanks. Well, the interesting thing about the US, it's a really highly concentrated market of high volume accounts. So there's around 1,900 hospitals in the US that implant CRT devices, but 50% of the entire market's in that top 252 accounts that you referenced. So our first year of commercialization will really be considered a limited market release. So in phase one, we'll plan to target those sites that participated in our SOLVE study. And here we can leverage our existing relationships with these study sites to streamline patient identification and the implant procedure. So our initial focus here will be on building a sustainable utilization rate. So we're going to be initially targeting 2 implants per site per month. And once we start to achieve that, we'll then move on to phase 2 of our limited market release. And here we'll target high volume sites where we already have strong engagement from implanters. And then finally, we move into the full commercialization phase, targeting those additional 200 sites that make up that top 50% of the entire US market. So to support this, we intend to use a direct sales force. So we've already identified high-performing sales reps, and these are primarily existing contacts of either Eric Strandberg, our Chief Commercial Officer, or Mike Manassi, our US Sales Director. And these are reps they've worked with previously. And these tend to be individuals that specialize in introducing new technology into the market. And the right sales rep is really crucial to drive utilization. So during an implant, they could be 2 hours shoulder to shoulder with an implanter. It's a great chance for them to build rapport, maybe discuss a challenging implant they've recently had. After the procedure, they can look at the implant book and identify patients that may have had a failed CRT lead implant. They can call in on the cath lab manager, maybe look at the case list for the next few weeks to identify some other high-risk cases that could be converted to wires. And then on their way out of the clinic, they can go down to the pacemaker clinic, and I help to identify those patients that recently had their left ventricular, their CRT lead programmed off. And all this is to help drive, internal referrals.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. Now, Andrew, innovation doesn't stop with one breakthrough, as we understand. And I'm really intrigued by your development of a new rechargeable battery for the CRT system. Can you tell us how might this innovation expand your market potential and treatment capabilities?
Yeah, well, rechargeable battery is a really exciting product development area for us. And we'll be the first cardiac rhythm management company to introduce a rechargeable battery. And they're quite common today in things like neurostimulation for chronic pain. And our move has really been driven by feedback from our implanters and patients. It'll use induction charging similar to how you charge your mobile phone. And this will really help to remove barriers to widespread adoption. It'll have a 66% reduction in size, so it's going to improve the comfort for a patient, and it reduces the need for future battery replacements. So in lieu of a replacement procedure every 4 to 4.5 years, the patient will simply recharge their device for 1 to 2 hours every week or two.
Wow, amazing. That's a wonderful step moving forward. Now, Andrew, as we look ahead, 2024 has been a significant year for EBR Systems. So can you walk us through the key milestones EBR has achieved in 2024 and what are your primary strategic goals for the coming year for 2025?
Yeah, so one of the key milestones that we hit in July was publication of the SOLVE results in JAMA Cardiology that I mentioned earlier. This has a really broad reach. It's a high impact factor journal, a lot of scientific credibility. Interestingly, we've received some feedback from the journal of the reach that it's actually had. There's an independent group called Altmetric that track research outputs across all scientific journals. And they notified us that our article was in the top 10% of all research outputs ever tracked. So this is measuring the quality and quantity of online attention that the articles had. So I think that bodes well for reach and awareness amongst the wider scientific community. The other big milestone was at the end of August, where we submitted our 5th and final module to the FDA as part of our PMA submission. The FDA notified us that they'd begun their substantial review within 30 days rather than the customary 45. And that bodes really well, I think, for the rest of the review cycle. And as we look ahead, we're expecting FDA approval early next year. Then following this, we'll begin execution of our commercialization plans. So reimbursement will be established, retraining of physicians on the implant procedure, and then we begin initial commercial cases in the U.S. Outside the U.S., we'll initiate 2 important clinical studies. The firstly is TLC, or totally leadless CRT, and this will really support our transition from treating previously failed patients to becoming first-line therapy, and this is by treating newly diagnosed heart failure patients. So this will involve implanting a leadless pacemaker alongside wires to deliver totally leadless CRT. The second study is called Access CRT, and this will build on our early work using the wise system to pace the heart's own conduction system leadlessly, and this will enhance the clinical utility or application of the wise system. And then finally, the other big milestone for next year will be expansion of our manufacturing facility, and this will allow us to increase our margins by continuing our transition away from contract manufacturers towards bringing in-house the full manufacture of our transmitter and electrode.
Amazing. Well, I would like to thank you, Andrew, for providing such comprehensive insights today. What you and your team at EBR are doing is indeed truly remarkable, not just developing a medical technology, but offering hope to patients with few other options. To our viewers and listeners at Wholesale Investor, this is more than just an investment opportunity. It's a chance to support a technology that could fundamentally change how we approach heart failure treatment. So please feel free to reach out to the team at EBR Systems. And Andrew, once again, thank you for joining me today in this conversation.
No, and thanks again for the opportunity, Rhythm. We always look forward to any chance we've got to share our story with the wider investment community. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.